Sung Jin-Woo is obviously among the most dripped characters of our time, but his insane stash of weapons might go even harder than his drip. If you've watched the anime or read the manhwa, you know that our boy Sung Jin-Woo uses daggers as his weapon of choice. Well, in this video, we'll be breezing through all the different daggers and other weapons he uses throughout the story in chronological order. But first things first, believe it or not, the first weapon Sung Jin-Woo ever used on screen was actually not a dagger, it was a sword. Back during the double layer raid when he stayed behind all by himself so that the other survivors could escape, one of the guys, a man named Kim, dropped his sword. Sung Jin-Woo's survival instincts kicked in and he picked up that sword to fight, and then later it was also this sword which he used to defeat Kasaka. So, if we are starting things off in chronological order, then the first weapon Sung Jin-Woo used was Kim's sword. Though, if we're talking off-screen, then our boy mentions in chapter 15 that he once bought a dagger for 50,000 won. 50,000 won is about $37, by the way. Okay, so the first weapon we see Sung Jin-Woo use in the story is Kim's sword. But we also know that he used to have a dagger. I'm mentioning this to point out that Sung Jin-Woo's weapon of choice is indeed a dagger. Now, the first weapon Sung Jin-Woo receives after becoming a player is Kasaka's Venom Fang. He got it after killing the blue venom-fanged snake, and it became his primary weapon for quite some time. It is, of course, made out of the snake's bones, and it is also imbued with the snake's venom. This allows Sung Jin-Woo to inflict poison on his opponents as an added bonus of fighting with the dagger. And as we know from Pokemon, once you get poisoned, your health stats continue to weaken continuously until you perish in battle. There are also two special extra effects that can be attributed to the snake's venom. We're talking about Bleed and Paralyze. Paralyze restricts the target's movements, and Bleed is about making them lose 1% of their health for every second the special effect is in order. Very handy, and it also must have been an extremely high-ranking item in Sung Jin-Woo's real world. We don't know how much he could have sold it for though. Overall, this just goes to show that even Sung Jin-Woo's very first weapon after becoming a player was absolutely top tier. The next one is Night Killer, and this is the first dagger that Sung Jin-Woo buys from the system shop. It cost him 2,800,000 gold in the system's currency, and is pretty busted even when compared to Kasaka's Venom Fang. You see, the Venom Fang has plus 25 attack prowess and is C rank when it comes to rarity. However, the Night Killer has 3 times as much attack power and is also an entire tier above Kasaka's Venom Fang when it comes to rarity. Its rank is B and its attack power is plus 75. And since it's a dagger designed to pierce through heavy armor, you get to deal an extra plus 25% damage when fighting armored opponents. Plus, wanna know how much Sung Jin-Woo was offered when he tried to get Night Killer appraised at the Korean Hunters auction? It was appraised for a 100 million won minimum. That's over 70,000 US dollars. Pretty neat considering how the first dagger Sung Jin-Woo bought was worth less than $40. And keep in mind that this is just a B rank item, but that just goes to show that even B rank items from the system are basically top tier stuff. And this is true even when it comes to practical usage because Jin-Woo was able to use it effectively even against top tiers such as the Monarch of White Flames Baran, who is also known as the King of Demons. Plus, did I mention how badass it looks? We have a dark black blade. The handle has a bunch of crazy sharp edges and a big glowing red gem smack dab in the middle that glows every time it reflects light. I'd say, if we're talking simple but epic, then this one looks like the coolest weapon Sung Jin-Woo has ever had. Anyways, so Sung Jin-Woo's next weapon upgrade happens at the end of the Red Gate dungeon arc. After he kills the elf warlord Baruka, he gets a dagger as one of the drop items. After the C rank Venom Fang and B rank Killer Knight, we have an A rank dagger that the story simply calls Baruka's Dagger. Its attack power is plus 110, and one thing that differentiates it from the other daggers is that it is imbued with a kind of magic that reduces the weight of the wielder, which means that just by wielding it, your agility increases. You get an agility boost of plus 10. Just like Night Killer, this dagger was also pretty useful against the King of Demons. Now, if we're talking the dagger's drop, then it's a tad bit smaller than the other daggers. When it comes to color scheme, it is the opposite of Night Killer because while the Night Killer is dark red and black, Baruka's dagger has a bluish white glow and a light gray handle. Ultimately, it's more useful than Night Killer as it literally increases your agility as well, but the Night Killer is still the coolest. Sung Jin-Woo uses both Nightkiller and Baruka's dagger until he defeats Baran, the king of demons, and finally gets his very first S-rank dagger. 2 daggers in fact, because this one came as a pair. Yes, after Sung Jin-Woo defeated the Demon King Baran during the Return to the Demon Castle arc, he received a pair of daggers as one of the drop items. The story calls them Demon King's daggers, and these replace Nightkiller and Baruka's dagger as Sung Jin-Woo's new primary weapons. So what's so special about these daggers? Well, they are S-rank when it comes to rarity, and their attack prowess is plus 220. But there are actually 2 more factors that these daggers have that other daggers don't. First is aura. When the Demon King used them, their edges glowed blood red. However, when our boy used them, they glowed light purple. This means that the daggers reflect their user's aura through their edges. They also look badass. We're talking massive black daggers with brown grips and red guards that kind of look like a demon's open mouth. It's a design befitting its name. Demon King's daggers, eh? Now, the second factor that these daggers have, which others don't, is something called 2 as 1. You see, when you are using these daggers together, you are given bonus attack power equaling exactly as many strength stats as you have. No wonder Sung Jin-Woo looked so demonic while holding these daggers. Still, they aren't the best. Sung Jin-Woo was unable to cut the statue of God. He couldn't cut Thomas Andre's skin either. During those fights, these daggers were so useless that our boy had to resort to using his fists. Alright, we'll be getting into Sung Jin-Woo's strongest and greatest pair of daggers in a bit, but first, let's talk about another weapon that he received as a drop item after Baran's defeat. In addition to Demon King's daggers, Sung Jin-Woo also received the Demon King's longsword. It is S-rank and also absurdly powerful, because it gives an attack boost of plus 350 points, and much like the daggers, it also has a special effect. In this case, the effect is called Storm of White Flames. It activates every time you take a swing with the sword, and it results in endless lightning within a certain area. This is automatic and works like an actual cinematic special effect, but the only difference is that the lightning is not only real, it is also very powerful. Oh yeah, let's also talk about the sword's drip. It is long and light-colored and looks like an interesting contrast to the dark daggers. It also has the aura effect because when Baran used it, the blade was light blue, guard was yellow, and hilt was gray. But when her boy held it, both the guard and hilt turned black. And later when Sung Jin-Woo received the black heart, the sword's blade also changed from light blue to light purple. We don't see him use it though because it was ultimately given to Igris. Alright, we're down to Sung Jin-Woo's strongest named weapon, and as everybody knows, it's a pair of daggers forged from the fang of a dragon. It's Kamish's Wrath, and let's just talk about how utterly busted and broken Kamish's Wrath is. Demon King's dagger has an attack power of plus 220, while these have an attack power of plus 1500. They are obviously also above S-rank in the sense that just like Sung Jin-Woo eventually reached a level where you could no longer classify him by rank, the same is the case with Kamish's Wrath. It's beyond S-rank. It's in a class of its own. The story itself described it as the most powerful dagger. It is forged by the sharpest fang of a dragon in a way that makes its sharpness second to none. And it is insanely sensitive to mana, which means that these daggers grow stronger depending on their wielder's mana capabilities. It is mentioned in the novel that Sung Jin-Woo was able to make them as light as a feather, which pretty much sounds like agility hacks. Now in terms of lore, Thomas Andre got Kamish's fang during the battle where 5 abnormally strong S-rank hunter survivors banded together to take down the dragon. He then had a weapon made out of that gang. They couldn't make a sword because the fang was too short, so they ended up making a pair of daggers, but since Thomas is a tanker class, he couldn't use the daggers, and that's why they were just sitting in an underground basement for 8 years. After his fight with Sung Jin-Woo, he flew to South Korea and gave the daggers to our boy as a present, and as we saw in the story, they were powerful enough to allow Sung Jin-Woo to easily slice up the lesser monarchs. We know that the Demon King's daggers were useless against Thomas's skin, but Thomas himself mentioned that if Sung Jin-Woo had used these during their fight, then his skin would have been easily sliced up. When it comes to weapon drip, Kamish's Wrath is solid. It's depicted differently in the webtoon when compared with the novel though. In the novel, it has ice-white blades, but in the webtoon, the edges are blood red, the hilt is gray, and the overall color scheme is orange. By the way, the daggers aren't equal in size. The smaller one has a black blade guard, while the thicker one has a golden blade guard. But believe it or not, even with this much drip and this much attack power among other stuff, Kamish's wrath was still useless against the King of Dragons himself. This is not too crazy because the King of Dragons, Antares, is actually the strongest monarch. Plus, Kamish was literally the king's servant, so it makes sense why Sung Jin-Woo would need something more than a dragon's fang to take down the King of Dragons. Wait, does that mean Sung Jin-Woo's strongest weapon ever isn't Kamish's wrath? Indeed. In chapter 178 of the webtoon, when the timeline is reset by the Cup of Reincarnation, Sung Jin-Woo creates a new pair of daggers with his own powers that were effective even against the strongest monarch. We don't know what he called them. All we know is that they were black in color and had a purple aura glow around their blades. And with that said, there you have it, guys. These were all the weapons Sung Jin-Woo wielded over the course of his long and legendary life. What do you think? Which one is your favorite? Come on, let's continue the conversation in the comment section down below.